Welcome back, friends. I'm glad you're here on a Friday. You are so awesome, aren't you? Because you're hanging out with me, and I'm so happy that you chose to spend your time here than anywhere else. Because we all know that Friday is when all the things happen. I know I promised you that I was going to teach you how I copy items from my closet without actually cutting them apart, because if I'm being honest, my clothing actually costs money and I kind of don't always want to cut it up and throw it away afterwards. And I dang sure don't want to cut it apart just to put it back together, am I right? Let's talk about that tank top I copied this one from.
I have not put it back together since.
Anywho, if you want to know how I do this, you kind of got to stick around. Come on, friends. It's Friday. Let's do a sewing thing. I'm Nye with Belly and Mac. Let's go, friends. Oh, no pun intended. In order to copy an item from your closet without cutting it apart, you really do have to consider your skill level. For some items, you may not want to take them and copy them because it's just way too many steps and far too much work that you may not be comfortable with. I would consider starting with something that's a little bit easier and work your way up from there. So what I did is I took this top out of my closet. Now, I love this top and I always get compliments on it because the color is super pretty with my skin tone. And I like the shape of it. And so, except for this elastic, which I'm going to undo. Anyway, and so I want to copy this shirt because I really like it. And I have a dress in the closet that I haven't worn in a while that I made a couple years ago. And I'm going to use that to make this shirt again. Now, how I do it. The first thing after I consider whether or not I've looked it over and I can kind of determine whether or not I can pull it off. The second thing I do is I look at the fabric. I want to pick a fabric that's similar to the one that I'm already copying, because the fabric weight style is going to decide how your item will fall. Now, if I chose to do this this is like a rayon challis. Now, if I chose to remake this shirt in something like a Liverpool, it's going to have a lot more structure. And so my sleeves are not going to be these flowing things. They're going to kind of stick out some because that fabric has a lot of shape and form to it. So you want to consider that. The second thing you want to consider is how many parts you have. So this shirt is like one part and this part is equal to this part. So I could probably cut one of each and make mirror copies. For the back, what I've noticed is that there is a seam right down the middle, and I think that I might keep that seam depending. I don't know. We'll see. Now, when they made this, they made it out of a really cool print because they had that right angle down there, which I think makes it super pretty. I don't think I'm going to be able to copy that, so I may just forego the back seam since I'm not trying to make any decorative touches like they did. I'm also going to look at the hems on it. I want to look at the finishes and see how they finished it. Now, this one is a pretty classy finish. I see that they used a bias binding here folded to the inside. So I want to make note of that so that I know that I'm going to have to do that as well in order for it to work for me the same way it does now. You want to look for like pockets. You want to make notes on specifically how the item is constructed, because that's going to determine the steps you take when you put your item together. Sometimes when copying an item, if I get the steps backwards, that means I have to unpick my seams and figure out what I should have done first. Like if I have to do a facing and connect that facing to the back end of a pair of shorts, I might want to put the elastic in the waistband first before I close it up, and then I have nowhere to put my elastic. So that's the kind of stuff that you want to think about. Look at the item, figure out how it's constructed in your mind, make some notes, and then we can get down to the nitty-gritty. Now, when you're copying an item, you want to get each piece as flat as possible, and that way you can copy it exactly the same. So I have this here paper, which I stole, borrowed from my child's creative closet, where she stores her markers and crayons and things of that nature, because I'm a good mom. What you're going to need is this paper, and you're going to need a tracing wheel. These are the two tracing wheels that I have. This one is a random tracing wheel that came with one of my sewing machines, and this is a single tracing wheel that actually has a seam allowance on it. It will automatically add a 1/2 inch seam allowance if you need it, or you can just flip it down and put it away and just use the tracing wheel. Isn't that dope? It's wonderful. So I have here wax-free tracing paper by Dritz. It was just a couple of dollars. I like this because it comes off with a little dab of water. What you're going to do is you're going to put your tracing paper down, okay? And you want to put the item on top of it. So I put my top on my paper as flat as I can. Now, what I'm going to do is leave my tracing. This is my tracing paper. You want to put the tracing paper under the item, and then use your tracing wheel to go around said item. Now you can do this with your pen or whatever, but this is really helpful because if you happen to get any on your item, you see now it makes a line for me, okay? So then I just kind of move this around and continue tracing. I've got that piece correct. I'm going to go ahead and just mark seam allowance. I know that here I'm going to need a seam allowance. Looking at the cuffs here, they're just rolled in. So I need a rolled edge. Okay, I'm going to need a seam allowance here at the shoulder. And I'm going to need a hem for that elastic. This is going to be the front. And I'm going to make sure that I cut 2 mirror pieces. Okay, that way I have the left and the right side of my top. Now, I also have to remember the grain line. So we want this to go straight up and down at a 90-degree angle. Okay? Anybody ever tell you that 90% of sewing is everything else but sewing? Sometimes I feel like I spend more time working on like
pattern pieces, or the projector settings, or finding a fabric or preparing that fabric than I actually do
sewing. It's sad, isn't it? I know. I hid it from myself. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take out another piece of paper. What you missed. I finished tracing and then I cut out all the pieces. It's the same process for every part. Be sure to make placement marks for pockets, darts, etc. directly over the garment. Be sure to take notes. The more difficult the garment, the more notes you may have to decipher afterwards. There's more than one way to color a rainbow, and this is just how my brain works it out. Here I am, cutting out my fabric. I went ahead and I cut out my top piece for the front, both mirrored, and I cut the back. Okay, there we go. Quick note, if you're going to copy a pattern and you've never done it before, then you should probably use a fabric that you don't mind cutting, because you may make some mistakes that you can't come back from. This was actually a dress that I made a few years ago that I don't really wear anymore, so I used it to determine whether or not I can get the fit of the top the way I like. Now, if I have to make some fixes to this piece, I will also make those fixes to those paper patterns over there. Because let's be real, if I make the top smaller in some places and then I still use the same pattern, I'm gonna have to keep editing my fabric pieces, and you don't want to do that. The goal is to get a piece that is perfect for you. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew it up and we'll see how it comes out. All right, so you get a little sneak peek of me doing my little rolled hem on my sleeves, and this is what I started with. Not too bad. And this is what we made. Also not too shabby. Yay! Thank you so much for coming this week and watching this video and hanging out with me. If you like my content, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and come back again next Tuesday, because you know I'm going to be here on Tuesday, right? Because we're friends. Have a nice week. Sew all the things. Yes. Bye.